I pulled into our driveway that Thursday night, windshield wipers fighting against sheets of rain that hammered down from the darkest storm clouds I'd ever seen. My evening economics class had run late, and I was already soaked just from sprinting to my car. But nothing prepared me for what waited at our front door. My mother stood there screaming, her face twisted with rage I'd never witnessed before. Behind her, my 19-year-old sister Ashley sobbed dramatically, pointing an accusing finger straight at me. "He stole $300 from your emergency fund," she wailed. "I saw him take it from the kitchen drawer." My mother's voice cracked like thunder. "Get out of my house." The words hit me harder than the icy rain that immediately soaked through my jacket as I stepped back from our doorway. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, water dripping from my hair, staring at my mother's furious expression, while Ashley continued her theatrical crying behind her. The smart thing would have been to defend myself, to demand proof, to fight back against whatever insane accusation my sister had just made. Instead, I simply turned around and walked away into the storm. The truth was, I had no idea what Ashley was talking about. I'd been at college all day, attending classes, and working on a group project in the library until 6:30. The only time I'd been home recently was Tuesday morning to grab my textbooks, and I hadn't even been in the kitchen. But something in my mother's eyes told me that arguing right now would only make things worse. She was beyond listening to reason, completely caught up in whatever story Ashley had fed her. My sneakers squelched through puddles as I walked down Maple Street, our quiet suburban neighborhood, transformed into something dark and unfamiliar by the relentless downpour. Streetlights created hazy circles of yellow light every 50 feet, but between them, everything disappeared into blackness. The storm had knocked out power to half the block, leaving several houses completely dark. I pulled my phone from my pocket, grateful it was still dry, and saw that it was 8:45. Where was I supposed to go? Most of my college friends lived in dorms, or with roommates I barely knew. My girlfriend Sarah was studying abroad this semester. My grandparents lived 3 hours away in Pennsylvania, and driving in this weather seemed dangerous. I needed somewhere warm and dry to think this through. Murphy's Diner appeared like a beacon through the rain, its neon sign flickering but still bright enough to read from 2 blocks away. The 24-hour restaurant had been a local institution for as long as I could remember. During high school, my friends and I used to go there after football games, ordering massive plates of fries and staying until midnight talking about everything and nothing. The bell above the door chimed as I entered, immediately grateful for the warmth and the smell of coffee and bacon. Only 3 other customers sat scattered across the red vinyl booths, and soft classic rock played from speakers mounted near the ceiling. A middle-aged waitress with graying brown hair approached me, her name tag reading Margaret. "Honey, you're absolutely soaked," she said, genuine concern in her voice. "Let me get you a towel and some hot coffee." "Thank you." I managed sliding into a corner booth where I could watch the parking lot through rain-streaked windows. "Just coffee for now." Margaret returned quickly with a steaming mug and several clean dish towels. "No charge for the towels, sweetie. You look like you've had a rough night." As I dried my hair and warmed my hands around the coffee mug, I finally allowed myself to process what had just happened. Ashley had accused me of stealing money from our mother's emergency fund. The fund was real enough, $300 or $400 that Mom kept in an envelope inside the kitchen junk drawer for genuine emergencies. But I hadn't touched it. In fact, I'd only learned about it last year when the washing machine broke and Mom had used some of that money for repairs. Why would Ashley lie about something so serious? We'd never been particularly close, but we'd never been enemies either. She was a year younger than me, still living at home while working part-time at a clothing store in the mall. Recently, she'd seemed more distant, spending hours on her phone and coming home late without explanation. Our parents had complained about her attitude, but I'd chalked it up to typical teenage rebellion. I pulled out my phone and called my best friend Connor, who was finishing his junior year at a college 2 hours north. The phone rang 4 times before his familiar voice answered. Dawson, what's up, man? Isn't it pretty late for you? Connor, I need help. Something crazy just happened. I explained the entire situation while he listened without interruption. That's insane, he said when I finished. Look, my parents are out of town until Sunday and we still have that guest house in the backyard. You remember it from when we had that graduation party? You're welcome to stay there until you figure this out. Relief flooded through me. Connor's family lived about 15 minutes away in a nicer neighborhood, and their guest house was essentially a small apartment with its own bathroom and kitchenette. Are you sure I don't want to impose? Don't be ridiculous. Family emergencies are what friends are for. Besides, my mom left me the spare key and told me to check on the place anyway. You'd actually be doing me a favor. After getting directions to find the key hidden under a fake rock near the back patio, I left Margaret a $5 tip on my $10 coffee and headed back into the storm. The rain had lessened slightly, but wind gusts still made driving treacherous. Twice I had to pull over when sheets of water made it impossible to see more than 20 feet ahead. Connor's neighborhood Willowbrook Estates featured larger houses set back from tree-lined streets. Even in the storm, I could see the careful landscaping and architectural details that spoke of upper-middle-class success. His family's house was a 2-story colonial with black shutters and a circular driveway. I parked behind the main house and found my way to the guest house by following a stone pathway illuminated by solar lights. The key was exactly where Connor had promised, and within minutes I was inside a cozy space that felt like a miniature apartment. A queen-sized bed dominated one corner, while a small sofa and coffee table created a living area near windows overlooking the backyard. The kitchenette included a refrigerator, microwave, and sink. Most importantly, it was warm and completely dry. As I sat on the sofa, finally able to think clearly, I noticed an envelope that had been slipped under the door. My name was written on the front in official-looking printing. Inside, I found a letter from the scholarship committee at my college dated 3 days ago. Dear Dawson Mitchell, it began. Congratulations, you have been selected to receive the Henderson Academic Achievement Scholarship in the amount of $5,000 for the upcoming academic year. This scholarship recognizes outstanding performance in business and economics courses, as well as demonstrated leadership potential. I stared at the letter, reading it twice to make sure I understood correctly. $5,000. I'd completely forgotten about applying for this scholarship back in February. The application process had been extensive, requiring essays, transcripts, and letters of recommendation. Apparently, I'd been so busy with finals and other commitments that I'd forgotten to check my mail at home regularly. But then something occurred to me that made my stomach clench. How had this letter been delivered to Connor's guest house? I looked at the envelope again and realized it was addressed to my family's home address, not here. Someone had brought it here, but who and why? A terrible suspicion began forming in my mind. What if Ashley somehow knew about this scholarship money? What if her accusation about the emergency fund was connected to this letter? But that seemed impossible. How could she have known about money I'd forgotten about myself? Yet as I thought about her behavior over the past few weeks, pieces of a puzzle began falling into place. Her secretive phone conversations that stopped whenever I entered a room. The new clothes she'd been wearing, claiming they were gifts from friends. Her defensive attitude whenever our parents asked about her job or how she was spending her time. I set the scholarship letter on the coffee table and tried to push away the growing conviction that my sister's lie was just the beginning of something much worse. I barely slept that night, tossing and turning on the unfamiliar bed, while rain continued drumming against the windows. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a crisp Friday that sparkled with water droplets on every surface. Sunlight streaming through the guest house windows should have felt encouraging, but I woke up with an even stronger sense that something was seriously wrong. The first thing I did was call the scholarship office at my college. The automated system directed me to Mrs. Patterson, the coordinator for academic awards, who answered on the second ring with a professional but friendly voice. Henderson Scholarship Program, this is Linda Patterson. Hi, Mrs. Patterson. This is Dawson Mitchell. I received notification about the Henderson Academic Achievement Scholarship, and I had some questions about the process. Oh, yes, Dawson. Congratulations on your selection. That's quite an honor. Only 12 students campus-wide receive that award each year. What can I help you with? Well, I was wondering if anyone else had called about my scholarship recently. Family members or anything like that. There was a pause, and I could hear papers shuffling. Actually, that's interesting that you ask. We did receive a call yesterday from someone claiming to be your mother. She said there was a family emergency and asked about redirecting the scholarship funds to a different account temporarily. My heart started pounding. What exactly did this person say? She claimed that your family was dealing with a medical crisis and needed the scholarship money to be transferred immediately to help with expenses. She provided your full name, your student ID number, and your home address, so we initially thought the call was legitimate. However, when she couldn't answer basic questions about your academic program or provide proper verification, we declined to make any changes and told her all scholarship modifications had to be handled by the student directly. Mrs. Patterson, I need to be completely clear about this. That was not my mother. Someone was trying to fraudulently access my scholarship money. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry this happened. We'll need to file a report about this immediately. Can you come in today to provide a statement and verify your identity? We take fraud attempts very seriously. After scheduling an appointment for that afternoon, I sat in the guest house trying to piece together what Ashley had done. She'd somehow learned about my scholarship, possibly by intercepting mail or checking my student account online. Then she'd tried to redirect the money to herself by impersonating our mother. When that failed, she'd panicked and decided to frame me for stealing from the emergency fund instead. But why did she need money so desperately? I decided to do some investigating of my own. I drove back toward my neighborhood parking 3 blocks away from our house and walking through the adjacent subdivision to approach from the backyard. Our house backed up to a small woods, and I knew I could observe without being seen from our old treehouse which Ashley and I had used as kids. Climbing the wooden ladder built into the oak tree felt strange at 20 years old, but the elevated position gave me a clear view into our kitchen and family room through the sliding glass doors. Ashley sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open, her phone pressed to her ear. Even from that distance, I could see the tension in her posture. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but her gestures were animated, almost frantic. She kept running her hands through her hair and looking around nervously. After about 10 minutes, she ended the call and immediately opened several browser tabs on her laptop. From my angle, I could see colorful graphics that looked like website interfaces, but I couldn't make out details. My phone buzzed with a text message from Connor. "How are you holding up? Found anything useful?" I responded, "At the old treehouse watching Ashley. Something's definitely wrong. She's acting really strange. Be careful. If she lied about the money, there might be more to this." Ashley's phone rang again, and this time her reaction was completely different. She jumped up from the table as if she'd been shocked, staring at the phone screen for several seconds before answering. Her body language immediately became submissive, almost fearful. She paced back and forth across the kitchen, frequently nodding even though the caller couldn't see her. This phone call lasted much longer, maybe 15 minutes. During that time, Ashley wrote something down on a piece of paper, crumpled it up, wrote something else, and finally settled on what looked like a list of some kind. When she finally hung up, she buried her face in her hands and sat completely still for several minutes. Then she did something that made my blood run cold. She pulled out a different phone, an older smartphone that I'd never seen before, and began typing a text message. The fact that she had a second phone suggested she was hiding communications from our parents, maybe from everyone. I climbed down from the treehouse and walked back to my car, my mind racing with possibilities. Ashley was clearly in some kind of trouble that went far beyond stealing emergency fund money. The secretive phone calls, the desperate attempt to access my scholarship funds, the fearful reaction to certain callers all pointed to something serious. On the drive back to Connor's guest house, I stopped at the public library and used their computers to do some research. I logged into my college student portal and checked my account activity. Sure enough, someone had attempted to log into my account 4 times over the past week using incorrect passwords. The attempts came from an IP address that traced back to our home internet connection. I also checked my credit report online and discovered something that made me sick to my stomach. 3 small loans had been taken out in my name over the past 2 months, totaling about $1,500. The applications listed my student ID number, my social security number, and my home address, but the contact phone number was one I didn't recognize. Ashley had been stealing my identity to take out loans. But what was she doing with the money? I drove to the scholarship office and spent an hour with Mrs. Patterson, filing a detailed report about the fraudulent call. She was extremely helpful, explaining that they'd implement additional security measures for my account and providing me with documentation that I could use if legal action became necessary. "Dawson, I have to ask," she said, as we concluded our meeting. "Do you have any idea who might have attempted this fraud? The caller had quite a bit of personal information about you." I hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. "I believe it was my sister. We're having some family issues right now." Mrs. Patterson's expression became sympathetic but serious. "I'm sorry to hear that. Family situations can be the most difficult to navigate. However, I want you to know that identity theft and fraud are serious crimes, regardless of who commits them. You might want to consider speaking with campus security or local police." Driving back toward Connor's neighborhood, I made a decision that I knew would change everything. I called the non-emergency number for our local police department and asked to speak with someone about identity theft and fraud. The desk sergeant was helpful, explaining that I should come in to file a report and bring all the documentation I'd gathered. But before I went to the police, I needed to understand exactly what Ashley was involved in. As I pulled into Connor's driveway, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "If Ashley doesn't pay what she owes by tomorrow, there's going to be consequences for your whole family. This is your only warning." The message was clearly meant for Ashley, but it had been sent to my phone by mistake. Someone out there thought I was her, which meant she'd been giving out my number along with my personal information. And whoever these people were, they were dangerous enough to threaten our entire family. I forwarded the threatening text to my own email account as evidence, then called Connor to fill him in on everything I'd discovered. "Dude, this is way more serious than we thought," he said. "Ashley's not just lying about emergency fund money. She's gotten involved with some really bad people." "I know. I think I need to go to my parents with this information before someone gets hurt." "Maybe you should go to the police first. Those threats sound legitimate." As I sat in the guest house that evening trying to decide on my next move, I realized that Ashley had trapped our entire family in her web of lies and criminal activity. Whatever she'd done, whatever she owed, the consequences were about to come crashing down on all of us. And I was the only one who knew the truth. Saturday morning brought clear skies and the kind of crisp October air that usually filled me with energy and optimism. Instead, I felt like I was carrying the weight of my family's future on my shoulders. I'd spent most of the night researching identity theft laws and trying to understand exactly how much legal trouble Ashley had created for herself and for me. The threatening text message haunted my thoughts. Someone named Vincent, according to my phone's caller ID from a follow-up call that went to voicemail, was expecting payment from Ashley by today. The voicemail had been brief, but chilling. "Your time's up. If we don't get our money by 6 tonight, we're coming to collect from whoever we can find." I was still trying to figure out how to approach my parents when Connor called with unexpected news. "Dawson, my dad just texted me. He's coming home early from his business conference because of some weather delays with their flights. He'll be back this afternoon instead of tomorrow night." "That's fine. I can find somewhere else to stay." "No, that's not why I'm calling. My dad is Robert Mitchell's business partner, remember? They work together at the consulting firm. If your dad's conference was delayed too, He might be coming home early as well. Connor was right. My father, Robert, had mentioned traveling to the same conference in Chicago that Connor's dad attended. If they were both coming home early due to flight delays, it could mean my father would be walking into this nightmare situation without any warning about what Ashley had done. I made a decision that scared me, but felt necessary. I drove back to our house parked in the driveway and knocked on the front door like a visitor rather than a family member. I could hear movement inside, then my mother's voice, asking who it was. "Mom, it's Dawson. I need to talk to you." The door opened slowly, revealing my mother's tired face. She looked like she'd aged years since Thursday night, with dark circles under her eyes and her usual perfect hair hanging limp around her shoulders. "Dawson, I don't know if this is a good time." "Mom, please. I have information about the money that went missing. Information you need to hear before Dad gets home." She hesitated, then stepped aside to let me enter. Ashley was nowhere to be seen, which made this conversation possible. My mother led me to the kitchen table where we sat across from each other in uncomfortable silence for a moment. "Mom, I need you to listen to everything I'm about to tell you without interrupting, okay? And then, I need you to help me protect our family." I explained everything methodically, starting with the scholarship letter and the fraudulent call to the college office. I showed her the documentation of loans taken out in my name, the threatening text messages, and the evidence of multiple attempts to access my student accounts. With each piece of information, my mother's expression changed from skepticism to shock to horror. "Dawson, are you telling me that Ashley—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Mom, Ashley is in serious trouble. She's stolen my identity to take out loans, she tried to steal my scholarship money, and she owes dangerous people enough money that they're threatening our family. The emergency fund money was just the tip of the iceberg." My mother started crying quietly, not the dramatic tears I'd seen from Ashley, but the exhausted sobs of someone whose world was falling apart. I knew something was wrong. Her behavior, the mood swings, the secrecy. But I thought it was just normal teenage problems. "Where is Ashley now?" "She left early this morning. Said she was going to work, but the mall doesn't open until 10 on Saturdays, and it's only 8:30 now." Before I could respond, we heard a car pulling into the driveway. My mother looked out the kitchen window and her face went pale. "That's your father's car. He's home early." "Mom, before he comes in, I need you to know that this is bigger than just family problems now. Ashley has committed federal crimes. Identity theft, fraud, possibly money laundering. We need to involve the authorities before someone gets hurt." Dad walked through the front door carrying his travel bag and looking frustrated. The flights were a complete disaster. Half the conference attendees got stuck in Chicago overnight. I finally caught a 6 a.m. flight that had 3 delays. He stopped when he saw me sitting at the kitchen table. "Dawson, what are you doing here?" Before anyone could answer, Dad's phone buzzed with a notification. Like many people his age, he'd recently set up the family smart TV to sync with his phone for sharing photos and videos. Without thinking about it, he walked into the family room and connected his phone to display his conference pictures on the big screen. "Let me show you both the hotel where we stayed. It was actually pretty impressive for a business conference venue." But instead of conference photos, Ashley's text messages appeared on the 55-inch television screen in full color. The family sharing settings, which Ashley had forgotten she'd enabled months ago, automatically synchronized her messages to the display whenever Dad's phone connected. The first message was time-stamped from Thursday night at 9:07, just 20 minutes after she'd gotten me kicked out of the house. "LMAO, Mom, totally bought it. Dawson's gone and she'll never know I took her emergency fund." This was easier than I thought. The room fell completely silent except for the sound of my mother's sharp intake of breath. But Ashley's messages kept appearing on the screen as the phone continued syncing. Text conversations with something called Lucky Strike Poker. Messages to various people asking for loans, desperate attempts to borrow money from high school friends. And then the truly damning evidence-detailed conversations about using my personal information to secure quick cash advances. One message thread made my father sink onto the sofa in shock. Got another $500 using my brother's student ID. The online lenders don't verify much if you have the right information. Should be enough to cover Tuesday's game. Another thread showed Ashley's communication with someone she called V. I can get the rest of the money by Friday. My brother has a scholarship coming in and my parents have emergency savings. Just give me until Friday and I'll have everything you want plus interest. My mother covered her mouth with both hands as she read message after message documenting Ashley's gambling addiction, her systematic theft of my identity, and her detailed plan to frame me for stealing the emergency fund money. The television screen painted a picture of calculated deception that none of us had imagined possible. Then the phone displayed Ashley's most recent messages sent just 2 hours ago. Can't find any more money. Parents are suspicious, and brother is asking questions. Might have to disappear for a while until this blows over. Dad finally found his voice. How long has this been going on? I pulled out my phone and showed him the threatening messages I'd received. Based on what I've found, at least 3 months. She's taken out multiple loans in my name, tried to steal my scholarship money, and owes serious money to people who are threatening our family. What kind of people? As if summoned by his question, the house phone rang. Dad answered it automatically, and we all heard a rough male voice, speaking loudly enough to be audible across the room. We know you're Ashley's father. She owes us $8,200 and we're done waiting. You've got until 6 tonight to pay what she owes, or we start collecting from family members. Your choice. The line went dead, leaving us staring at each other in stunned silence. $8,200, my mother whispered. How could she possibly owe that much money? Dad's phone buzzed with another notification, and Ashley's latest message appeared on the TV screen. Just got another threatening call. They have our home address and they know about Dawson's car. I think I need to leave town tonight. She's planning to run away, I said. She's going to disappear and leave us to deal with the consequences of her crimes. Dad sat down heavily at the kitchen table, looking older than I'd ever seen him. We need to call the police. I agree. But Dad, there's something else you need to know. I contacted the college about the fraud attempt on my scholarship, and they're requiring a police report. Ashley's crimes are already being investigated whether we want them to be or not. My mother looked back and forth between Dad and me. What about Ashley? What's going to happen to her? That depends on what she chooses to do next, I said. If she cooperates with the authorities and gets help for her gambling problem, she might avoid jail time. If she runs away and keeps lying, she's going to face serious federal charges. Dad's phone displayed one final message from Ashley. If anyone asks, I was never involved in anything illegal. This is all Dawson's fault somehow. Even in the face of overwhelming evidence, even when caught in lies that could destroy our family, Ashley was still trying to blame me for her choices. Dad disconnected his phone from the TV and looked directly at me. Son, I owe you an enormous apology. I should never have let you walk out into that storm without hearing your side of the story. Dad, you didn't know Ashley's lies were very convincing. That's no excuse for how I handled things. You're my son, and I should have trusted you. As we sat around our kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of family meals over the years, I realized that this crisis was either going to destroy us or make us stronger. Ashley's web of lies had pulled our family into something dangerous and complicated. But for the first time since Thursday night, I felt like we might actually be able to fight back together. The question was whether Ashley would choose to be part of the solution or continue digging herself deeper into trouble that could affect all of us for years to come. By noon Saturday, our house felt like the headquarters of a crisis management operation. Dad had called his business attorney. Mom was organizing financial documents, and I was preparing a comprehensive timeline of Ashley's fraudulent activities for the police report we planned to file Monday morning. But first, we needed to find Ashley and convince her to come home before 6 p.m. when Vincent's deadline expired. try calling her again? Mom suggested pacing back and forth across the kitchen with nervous energy. I'd already tried Ashley's number 6 times, getting voicemail each attempt. She's not answering anyone's calls. I think she's genuinely planning to disappear. Dad hung up the phone after speaking with his attorney. Marcus says Ashley's situation is serious, but not hopeless, if she cooperates fully with law enforcement. Identity theft and fraud can result in federal charges, but first-time offenders who make restitution and get treatment sometimes avoid prison time. What about the people threatening us? Mom asked. What do we do about Vincent and whoever else she owes money to? Marcus recommends contacting police immediately about the threats. That's a separate criminal matter from Ashley's fraud. Before anyone could respond, a car door slammed in our driveway. We all rushed to the living room windows, hoping to see Ashley returning home. Instead, a black SUV sat in our driveway, and 3 men in dark clothing were walking toward our front door. The man in front was large and intimidating, with visible tattoos covering his arms. The other 2 flanked him like bodyguards. Nobody answer the door, Dad said quietly. Let's call 911 right now. The front doorbell rang, followed immediately by loud knocking that echoed through the house. A deep voice called out, "We know you're home. Ashley's family owes us money, and we're here to collect." Mom was already dialing 911 when the knocking became pounding. "Emergency dispatch. What's your emergency?" "We have 3 men at our front door threatening us about money that my daughter owes them. We're afraid for our safety." "Are the men trying to break in?" The pounding stopped, but we could hear voices outside discussing something in low tones. "Not yet, but they're not leaving either. One of them looks like he might have a weapon." "Officers are en route to your location. Stay inside and away from windows and doors." Dad had moved to a position where he could observe the front yard without being seen. "They're walking around the house now, looking in windows. This is definitely not a friendly debt collection visit." I pulled out my phone and showed them the threatening messages again. "These people think I'm Ashley because she's been using my phone number and personal information. They might not even realize they're threatening the wrong person." "That actually makes it worse," Dad said. "If they think you're the one who owes them money, they might try to take you instead of cash." The house phone rang, making all of us jump. Dad checked the caller ID before answering carefully. "Mitchell residence." "This is Officer Sarah Chen with the County Police Department. We have units responding to your address. Can you tell me if the subjects are still on your property?" "Yes, they're walking around our house looking through windows. We can see them from our living room." "Please stay away from windows and doors. Our units should arrive within 2 minutes." True to her word, we heard sirens approaching within minutes, and the 3 men quickly returned to their SUV and drove away before the police cars turned onto our street. 2 patrol cars arrived and spent the next hour taking our statements, documenting the threatening messages, and assessing the security of our home. Officer Martinez, a veteran patrolman with a calm and professional manner, explained our options. "These threats constitute criminal intimidation and possibly extortion. However, the underlying issue is your daughter's gambling debts, which puts this in a gray area legally. We can arrest these men if they return and threaten you again, but the debt itself is a civil matter." "What do you recommend?" Dad asked. "Find your daughter and get her to cooperate with law enforcement immediately. If she's involved with illegal gambling operations, there may be federal agencies interested in the larger criminal organization. Her cooperation could be valuable to a bigger investigation." After the police left, we discovered that Ashley had been monitoring the situation from a distance. My phone rang with a call from her number, and when I answered, she was crying and panicked. "Dawson, I saw the police cars at the house. Are Mom and Dad okay? Did those men hurt anyone? Ashley, where are you? Come home so we can help you." "I can't come home. If Vincent's people see me there, they'll hurt our family. I never meant for this to get so dangerous." "It's too late to worry about that now. You need to face this situation before it gets worse." "You don't understand. I don't just owe money to Vincent. I owe money to 3 different groups of people, and they're all getting impatient. The gambling website I was using wasn't legal, and when I couldn't pay them, They sold my debt to collectors who use violent methods. This was news that made my stomach drop. How much do you owe in total? About $15,000. Dad, who had been listening to my side of the conversation, gestured for the phone. I put it on speaker so everyone could hear. Ashley, this is your father. I need you to listen carefully. You have two choices right now. You can come home and we'll work together to fix this situation legally and safely, or you can run away and face federal criminal charges plus violent debt collectors for the rest of your life. Dad, I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. It started as just a few dollars here and there, but the games were so exciting, and when I won early on, I thought I could pay everything back and no one would ever know. Sweetheart, gambling addiction is a real medical condition. There are treatment programs that can help you, but first we need to ensure everyone's safety. I'm scared, Dad. I'm scared of the people I owe money to, and I'm scared of going to jail. Where are you right now? I'm at the Greyhound bus station downtown. I bought a ticket to Phoenix where my friend Jessica lives. The bus leaves in 2 hours. Mom took the phone. Ashley, if you run away, you'll be a federal fugitive. That means you'll never be able to come home, never be able to have a normal life. Is that really what you want? For several minutes, we could hear Ashley crying, but not speaking. Finally, she said, "What do I do, Mom? How do I fix this? You come home and we face this together as a family. What about Vincent and the other collectors?" Dad had been researching on his laptop while we talked. I found something interesting. Vincent's operation has been under FBI investigation for 6 months. If you cooperate with federal agents, you might be able to help them shut down the entire criminal network. You mean become an informant? I mean providing information that could protect other people from going through what you've put our family through. There was another long pause. Then Ashley said something that gave me hope for the first time in days. "I'll take a taxi home. But I need you to promise that we'll figure out a way to keep everyone safe." "We promise," Dad said. "But Ashley, no more lies. No more secrets. If we're going to fix this, you have to tell us everything." "I understand. I'll be home in an hour." After hanging up, the three of us sat around the kitchen table trying to process everything that had happened. Our family had been threatened by criminals, Ashley was facing potential federal charges, and we were dealing with debts that amounted to more than most people's annual salaries. But for the first time since this crisis began, I felt like we might actually be able to work together to find a solution. Ashley was coming home, the authorities were aware of the situation, and we had legal representation to help navigate the complex criminal and civil issues involved. The question was whether we could resolve everything before Vincent's people decided to escalate their collection efforts beyond intimidation. Ashley arrived home at 3:30 Saturday afternoon looking like she'd aged 5 years in the past week. Her usually perfect hair hung in greasy strands, her clothes were wrinkled from sleeping in them, and dark circles under her eyes told the story of many sleepless nights. But most importantly, she walked through our front door voluntarily, ready to face the consequences of her actions. "I'm sorry," were the first words out of her mouth as she set her overnight bag down in the entryway. "I'm sorry to everyone for everything. I know that doesn't begin to cover what I've done, but I need you to know that I never intended for anyone else to get hurt." Mom hugged her tightly, while Dad and I maintained some distance. Trust would have to be rebuilt gradually, but at least Ashley was here, and apparently ready to tell the truth. "Sit down," I said, gesturing toward the kitchen table. "We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with before we can figure out how to fix it." For the next 2 hours, Ashley provided a detailed confession that was both heartbreaking and infuriating. Her gambling addiction had started innocently enough with a poker app that some college friends had recommended. At first, she'd won more than she'd lost, making a few $100s that seemed like easy money for someone earning minimum wage at a retail job. "The early wins were like a drug," she explained. "I felt smarter than everyone else, like I'd discovered this secret way to make money, so I started playing higher stakes games. The transition from legal gambling apps to illegal online poker sites had happened gradually. Someone she'd met through the apps had invited her to private games with higher payouts and fewer regulations. That's where she'd met other players who introduced her to underground gambling operations that operated more like loan shark businesses than entertainment companies. When I started losing, they offered to extend credit so I could keep playing and potentially win back what I'd lost. But the interest rates were insane, like 30% per month. Before I knew it, I owed more in interest than I'd ever lost in actual games. That's when you started stealing from the family, Dad said. First, it was just $20 here and there from Mom's purse, or loose change from around the house. I told myself I was borrowing it and would pay it back when I won big. But I kept losing, and the debts kept growing. Ashley explained how she'd gradually escalated to more serious theft, starting with Mom's emergency fund and progressing to identity theft when family money wasn't enough to cover her debts. Using my personal information had been surprisingly easy, since we'd grown up in the same house with access to each other's documents. I found your social security card in your old desk drawer, and I knew your student ID number from when you'd given it to Mom for tax purposes. The online loan applications barely verified anything. You stole $1,500 using my identity, I said, but you told us on the phone that you owe $15,000 total. Where did the rest come from? Ashley's face crumpled with shame. The loan sharks compound the debts quickly. If you miss a payment, they add penalties and interest that can double what you owe within a month. Plus, when I couldn't pay Vincent, he referred my case to other collectors who each added their own fees. Dad had been taking notes throughout Ashley's confession. So you're saying that multiple criminal organizations now claim you owe them money? 3 different groups. Vincent represents the original poker site that extended credit. Then there's a guy called Tony who bought part of my debt from Vincent. And finally, there's some organization that just calls itself the collection agency that handles the worst cases. Ashley, Mom said gently, why didn't you come to us when this first started getting out of hand? Because I was embarrassed, and because I really believed I could win it all back. Every gambling addict thinks the next game will be the one that solves everything. And honestly, I was afraid you'd be disappointed in me. We're disappointed in your choices. Dad said, but we're not disappointed in you as a person. There's a difference. I pulled out my laptop and showed Ashley the scholarship letter that had started my investigation. When you tried to steal my scholarship money, you made this personal. But I think I understand now that you were desperate and not thinking clearly. I'm so sorry, Dawson. I knew you'd worked hard for that scholarship, but I convinced myself it was just sitting there not being used. I thought maybe you wouldn't even notice until next semester. The thing is, Ashley, your problems have become our family's problems now. These people are threatening all of us, not just you. Ashley nodded miserably. I know, that's why I was going to leave town. I thought if I disappeared, they'd give up and leave you alone. That's not how criminal organizations work, Dad said. If you disappeared, they would have assumed we were helping you hide, and they would have focused their collection efforts on us. So what do we do now? I'd been thinking about this question since the police visit, and I'd formed a plan that might protect our family, while also helping Ashley face her responsibilities. We're going to take control of this situation instead of just reacting to it. I pulled out a legal pad and began outlining my strategy. First, we're going to hire a criminal defense attorney who specializes in financial crimes. Dad's business lawyer is great for contracts and civil issues, but Ashley needs someone who understands federal fraud charges. Second, we're going to contact the FBI about the illegal gambling operation and the threatening debt collectors. If these organizations are operating interstate gambling businesses and using intimidation tactics, that's federal jurisdiction. Third, Ashley is going to enter a gambling addiction treatment program immediately. That shows good faith to prosecutors and judges, and more importantly, it addresses the root cause of this situation. Fourth, we're going to liquidate every available asset to pay off as much of the legitimate debt as possible. That includes my scholarship money, Ashley's savings, and probably some family emergency funds. Dad looked up from his note-taking. That's a comprehensive approach, but what about the immediate threats Vincent's people could come back tonight? That's where the FBI involvement becomes crucial. If Ashley can provide detailed information about the illegal gambling operations, federal agents might be able to use her cooperation to build cases against the criminal organizations. Ashley looked frightened. You want me to become an informant against dangerous criminals? I want you to provide information that could prevent other families from going through what we're experiencing. And yes, that information could be valuable to law enforcement. Mom had been quiet during this planning session, but now she spoke up with a question that cut to the heart of our situation. What happens if Ashley goes to prison? What happens to our family if these criminal organizations decide to retaliate? Those are real risks, I admitted. But the alternative is living with ongoing threats and criminal liability indefinitely. Ashley's debts aren't going away, and her crimes are already being investigated. Our choice is whether we face this proactively or wait for it to get worse. Dad closed his legal pad and looked at each of us in turn. I think Dawson's right. We can't solve this by hoping it goes away. We need professional help, legal protection, and a comprehensive plan. What's the first step? Ashley asked. First step is making sure everyone stays safe tonight. We're going to call Officer Martinez and arrange for increased patrol coverage of our house this weekend. Second step is finding a qualified criminal defense attorney first thing Monday morning. Third step is Ashley providing a complete written statement, documenting every aspect of her gambling activities, debt obligations, and contacts with criminal organizations. Ashley nodded slowly. Okay, I can do that. But I'm scared about what happens next. We're all scared, Mom said, but we're going to face this together, which means you don't have to handle it alone anymore. For the first time in months, Ashley smiled a genuine smile instead of the fake cheerfulness we'd grown accustomed to. Thank you for not giving up on me. Families don't give up on each other, I said. But Ashley, this is your last chance to be completely honest. If we find out you've lied about anything else, we won't be able to help you. I understand. No more lies, no more secrets. As evening approached, I felt cautiously optimistic about our family's ability to work through this crisis together. We had a plan, we had each other's support, and most importantly, Ashley seemed genuinely committed to taking responsibility for her actions. The real test would come when we started implementing our strategy and discovered how difficult it was to untangle years of lies and criminal activity. But for now, sitting around our kitchen table with my family, united in purpose, I believed we could overcome anything. Monday morning brought the kind of cold rain that made everything seem more difficult and serious. We'd spent Sunday afternoon researching criminal defense attorneys and preparing Ashley's written statement, but today would be the first real test of our family's plan to confront the crisis head-on. At 8 a.m., we sat in the offices of Marcus Thompson, criminal defense attorney, a specialist in financial crimes, who came highly recommended by Dad's business lawyer. Thompson was a tall, distinguished man in his 50s, with graying hair and the kind of calm confidence that comes from handling thousands of difficult cases. Based on the information you've provided, Thompson said after reviewing Ashley's statement, we're dealing with several separate but related criminal matters: identity theft, fraud, money laundering, and potentially racketeering if the gambling operations cross state lines. What's Ashley looking at in terms of potential penalties? Dad asked. Honestly, if she were prosecuted to the full extent of the law, she could face up to 20 years in federal prison and hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. However, first-time offenders who cooperate fully with law enforcement and make genuine efforts at restitution typically receive much lighter sentences. Ashley looked pale but determined. What do I need to do to cooperate? First, you need to provide detailed information about everyone you've had contact with in these gambling operations. Names, phone numbers, websites, meeting locations, everything. Second, You may need to participate in controlled communications with these individuals while working with federal agents. You mean recording conversations and arranging meetings? Possibly. The FBI has been investigating interstate gambling operations for years, and your information could be valuable to ongoing cases. But that also means you'd be helping to shut down criminal organizations that hurt vulnerable people. Thompson opened a thick folder and showed us documentation about similar cases. Last year, I represented a young man in a situation very similar to Ashley's. He provided information that helped the FBI arrest 37 people involved in illegal gambling and loan sharking. In exchange for his cooperation, he received 2 years of probation and community service instead of prison time. What about restitution? Mom asked. That's where things get complicated. The legitimate debts from legal gambling activities need to be repaid. The illegal debts from criminal organizations may not be legally enforceable. But that doesn't mean the criminals will stop trying to collect. Thompson explained that our strategy should focus on distinguishing between legal gambling debts that Ashley was morally and legally obligated to repay, and criminal extortion that law enforcement needed to address through prosecutions and arrests. The good news is that federal agents are very interested in meeting with Ashley. I've already reached out to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, and they want to schedule an interview this week. After leaving Thompson's office, we drove to the FBI field office downtown where Special Agent Jennifer Walsh was waiting to speak with Ashley. Agent Walsh was a professional woman in her 40s who specialized in gambling crimes and had extensive experience with cases involving young people who'd been exploited by criminal organizations. Ashley, I want you to understand that you're not in trouble with us right now, Agent Walsh explained. You're here voluntarily to provide information that could help us protect other families from going through what yours has experienced. The interview lasted 3 hours, during which Ashley provided details about the gambling websites, the individuals she'd met through online games, and the escalating threats her family had received. Agent Walsh recorded everything and took extensive notes about names, dates, and locations. This information is extremely valuable, Agent Walsh said when Ashley finished. The websites you've described are part of a multi-state criminal enterprise we've been tracking for 18 months. Your cooperation could help us connect several ongoing investigations. What happens to Ashley now? I asked. That depends on several factors. If she continues to cooperate and provides testimony when needed, federal prosecutors are likely to recommend minimal charges with probation and treatment requirements rather than prison time. What about the people threatening our family? We're going to address that immediately. Vincent Carbone and his associates are already under federal surveillance. The threats against your family give us probable cause to arrest them for criminal intimidation and extortion. Agent Walsh explained that the FBI had been building a case against Vincent's organization for months, but they'd lacked direct testimony from victims who were willing to cooperate. Ashley's willingness to provide detailed information and potentially testify could be the breakthrough they needed. However, I need to be completely honest with you about the risks. Once we arrest these individuals, their associates may attempt retaliation. We can provide temporary protection, but you'll need to be vigilant about your personal safety. What kind of protection? Dad asked. Increased police patrols, temporary relocation if necessary, and direct contact with federal agents if you receive any threats. We take witness protection seriously, especially when families are involved. Over the next week, our lives transformed into something resembling a police investigation television show. FBI agents arrested Vincent Carbone and 3 of his associates on Wednesday morning, seizing computers, financial records, and communications equipment from multiple locations across the state. The arrests made local news, which brought unexpected consequences. Ashley received dozens of phone calls from other young people who'd been victimized by similar gambling operations. Many of them thanked her for coming forward and providing information that led to the arrests. I never realized how many people were going through the same thing, Ashley told us over dinner Thursday night. I thought I was the only one stupid enough to fall for these scams. You weren't stupid, Mom said. You were targeted by criminals who specifically prey on young people with addictive tendencies. Ashley had started attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings and working with a counselor who specialized in addiction treatment. The combination of therapy and legal consequences seemed to be helping her understand the seriousness of her situation, while also giving her tools to address the underlying problems. My counselor says that gambling addiction affects brain chemistry in ways that make rational decision-making almost impossible, Ashley explained. That doesn't excuse what I did, but it helps me understand why I kept making worse and worse choices even when I knew they were wrong. Dad had been working with our financial advisor to liquidate assets that could be used for restitution. The total amount included my scholarship money, which I'd agreed to contribute Ashley's college savings account, and a portion of our parents' retirement fund. We'll be able to pay back about $12,000, Dad reported. That covers the legitimate gambling debts and most of the money Ashley stole using Dawson's identity. What about the other threats? I asked. Agent Walsh had provided updates throughout the week. The arrest of Vincent's organization had a ripple effect through the criminal network, with several other suspects fleeing the state and others attempting to destroy evidence. But it also meant that Ashley's cooperation had helped dismantle a significant criminal enterprise. The other collectors have backed off since Vincent's arrest, Agent Walsh explained during a Friday afternoon meeting. Criminal organizations rely on intimidation, but they also don't want federal law enforcement attention. Once we arrested the primary actors, the secondary players typically disappear. So we're safe as we can be. There's always some risk when dealing with criminal organizations, but the immediate threats have been neutralized. Friday evening, our family gathered around the kitchen table to reflect on the most intense week of our lives. Ashley would still face legal consequences, including probation and community service, but the threat of federal prison had been significantly reduced by her cooperation. The financial damage was substantial but manageable through careful planning and family support. I have something to say, Ashley announced. I know that my actions nearly destroyed our family, and I know that rebuilding trust will take years, not weeks. But I want you to know that I've learned more about myself and about the value of family in the past week than I learned in the previous 19 years of my life. What will you do differently going forward? I asked. First, I'm going to continue addiction treatment for as long as it takes. Second, I'm going to pay back every dollar I stole, even if it takes me years to do it. Third, I'm going to work with law enforcement and addiction counselors to help other young people avoid making the same mistakes I made. That sounds like a good start, Dad said. And Dawson, I need you to know that you saved our family by refusing to let me blame you for my problems. If you'd given up on us, or if you'd decided to protect yourself instead of trying to help me, this story would have had a very different ending. Looking back on the week that changed our family forever, I realized that Ashley was right. The moment I walked away from our house in the storm, I could have decided to protect myself and let my family deal with the consequences of Ashley's lies. Instead, I'd chosen to investigate the truth and fight for my family's future. Sometimes the most important battles aren't the ones you choose, but the ones that choose you. And sometimes walking away from a fight is the first step toward winning it. 6 months after that terrible Thursday night when I walked out into the storm, I found myself sitting in the same kitchen where our family had nearly fallen apart, but everything felt different now. The legal proceedings were finally complete. Ashley had successfully finished her first phase of addiction treatment, and our family had learned lessons that would benefit us for the rest of our lives. Ashley's federal case had concluded with a plea agreement that reflected her full cooperation with law enforcement. She received 3 years of probation, 200 hours of community service working with gambling addiction prevention programs, and restitution requirements that she was steadily fulfilling through her new job at a financial counseling center. The irony is that my gambling addiction led me to a career helping people with financial problems, Ashley said, reviewing her community service hours. I never would have discovered this passion for helping others without going through my own crisis. The federal investigation that Ashley's cooperation had made possible resulted in 43 arrests across 5 states, the seizure of over $2 million in illegal gambling profits, and the shutdown of an entire criminal network that had been victimizing young people for years. Agent Walsh kept us updated on the broader case, explaining how Ashley's willingness to come forward had prevented hundreds of other families from experiencing similar threats and financial devastation. Your daughter's cooperation was crucial to this investigation, Agent Walsh told our parents during our final meeting. The evidence she provided helped us connect criminal organizations across multiple states and build cases that will keep dangerous people in prison for years. Vincent Carbone had been sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for racketeering money laundering and operating an illegal gambling enterprise. His associates received sentences ranging from 3 to 8 years. Most importantly for our family, the entire criminal network that had threatened us was now either incarcerated or under ongoing federal investigation. Dad had used the crisis as an opportunity to strengthen our family's financial planning and communication. We now held monthly family meetings to discuss budgets, goals, and any concerns that might affect our collective well-being. The emergency fund that had been stolen was not only restored but expanded to provide better security for genuine emergencies. One positive outcome of this situation is that we're much more aware of each other's financial and emotional well-being, Dad explained. We should have noticed Ashley's problems months before they reached crisis levels. Mom had become involved with a support group for families affected by gambling addiction, using her experience to help other parents recognize warning signs and navigate the complex legal and emotional challenges of supporting an addicted family member while protecting themselves from criminal consequences. I meet parents every week who are going through exactly what we experienced, Mom told us. The shame and isolation that families feel when dealing with gambling addiction makes everything worse. Having a support network makes recovery possible for everyone involved. My relationship with Ashley had evolved into something deeper and more honest than the casual sibling connection we'd had before the crisis. Working through her betrayal and rebuilding trust had been difficult, but it had also created a foundation for genuine friendship and mutual respect. Dawson, I need to ask you something, Ashley said as we walked through the neighborhood where I'd wandered during that first terrible night. Do you really forgive me for what I put our family through? I forgive you for the gambling addiction, which was a medical condition you didn't fully understand or control. I forgive you for the lies and theft, which were desperate attempts to solve an impossible situation. But Ashley, I'll never forget how close we came to losing everything because you chose to blame me instead of asking for help. I understand that. I think remembering how close I came to destroying our family is part of what keeps me committed to recovery and honesty. Ashley had been clean from gambling for 6 months, attended Gamblers Anonymous meetings twice a week, and worked with a counselor who specialized in addiction and financial crimes. More importantly, she'd developed healthy coping mechanisms for stress and anxiety that didn't involve hiding or escaping from problems. My counselor says that addictions are often symptoms of underlying emotional issues that people don't want to face, Ashley explained. For me, gambling was a way to avoid feeling like I was falling behind my peers, financially and socially. Instead of addressing my insecurities directly, I tried to solve them by winning money. The college scholarship that had originally been threatened by Ashley's fraud attempts had been restored and expanded. The scholarship committee, impressed by how I'd handled the crisis and my willingness to use my own money to help my family with restitution, had offered me an additional merit-based award for leadership and integrity. Your actions during your family's crisis demonstrated exactly the kind of character and decision-making we hope to see in scholarship recipients, Mrs. Patterson had written in her letter announcing the additional award. Using your scholarship money to help your sister get treatment and make restitution showed remarkable maturity and ethical reasoning. I'd returned to college with a renewed appreciation for education, and a clearer sense of my career goals. The experience of working with attorneys, federal agents, and financial counselors had sparked my interest in pursuing law school, with a focus on helping families navigate legal and financial crises. Dawson's planning to specialize in white-collar criminal defense, Dad explained to relatives who asked about my career plans. He wants to help families dealing with situations similar to what we went through. The guest house where I'd stayed during the worst of the crisis had become a symbol of how quickly life could change, but also of how important it was to have friends and community support during difficult times. Connor and his family had remained close to us throughout the legal proceedings, providing emotional support and practical assistance whenever needed. I learned that real friends don't just celebrate your successes, I told Connor during one of our regular check-ins. They stand by you when your life falls apart, and they help you rebuild when you're ready to move forward. As I sat in our kitchen on a quiet Sunday afternoon reviewing college applications for law school and watching Ashley help Mom prepare dinner while they discussed Ashley's community service work, I reflected on the lessons our family had learned through crisis. First, that addiction is a medical condition that affects entire families, not just individual choices that only impact the person making them. Ashley's gambling problem had created legal, financial, and safety issues for everyone who loved her, which meant her recovery was a family project that required everyone's commitment and support. Second, that honesty and communication are not just good values in theory, but practical tools that can prevent small problems from becoming life-threatening crises. If Ashley had been able to talk about her gambling losses when they first started getting out of control, if our parents had been more aware of warning signs, if our family had established better communication about financial and emotional stress, the entire crisis might have been avoided. Third, that sometimes the best way to help someone you love is to refuse to enable their destructive behavior, even when that means allowing them to face serious consequences for their choices. Walking away from Ashley's accusation instead of fighting it had ultimately led to the truth being revealed and the entire criminal network being exposed. Fourth, that cooperation with law enforcement and willingness to face legal consequences honestly can transform someone from a victim into a person with agency and the ability to protect others from similar harm. Ashley's decision to work with federal agents had not only helped our family escape from criminal threats, but had also contributed to protecting hundreds of other families from similar victimization. Finally, that families can survive betrayal and rebuild trust, but only when everyone is committed to complete honesty and genuine change. The relationships we'd formed since the crisis were deeper and more authentic than the relationships we'd had before, because they were based on real knowledge of each other's strengths and weaknesses rather than assumptions and superficial interactions. I have one more thing to share with you, Ashley said, joining me at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. I got a letter from a girl in college whose brother was involved with the same gambling ring that I was. She said that reading about my cooperation in the newspaper gave her family the courage to contact the FBI about threats they were receiving. That's amazing. You're helping other families avoid what we went through. It makes me feel like maybe some good can come from the worst period of my life. My counselor calls it meaning-making, turning trauma and mistakes into opportunities to help other people. As evening approached and our family gathered around the dinner table, I looked at each person and felt grateful for how we'd supported each other through the most difficult challenge any of us had ever faced. Dad had provided steady leadership and legal expertise. Mom had offered emotional support and advocacy for Ashley's treatment. Ashley had found the courage to face her mistakes and commit to genuine change. And I had learned that sometimes protecting your family means refusing to let them blame you for their problems. The teenager who had walked out into that storm 6 months ago had been confused and hurt by what felt like arbitrary injustice. The young man sitting at our family dinner table today understood that justice isn't always immediate or obvious, But that truth eventually reveals itself when people have the courage to seek it and the patience to work for it. Our story could have ended with a family destroyed by addiction crime and mutual blame. Instead, it became a story about how honest communication, professional help, and genuine commitment to change can transform a crisis into an opportunity for growth, healing, and deeper connection. I want to ask everyone watching this, have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and fighting for your family? Have you experienced the challenge of loving someone whose addiction put everyone at risk? How did you balance holding someone accountable while still offering them support for recovery? Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more stories about families overcoming difficult challenges together. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing about gambling addiction recovery or family crisis support, please share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my family's story, and remember that even in our darkest moments, we always have the choice to seek truth, ask for help, and work together toward healing and hope.